Hey, okay, now we're going to talk about something really interesting. This is one of my favorite aspects of the vocoder, and it's rarely discussed or talked about, and I'm not sure why. This video is going to be probably kind of visually boring. I'll have to gesture more because I'm not going to be playing the vocoder. Other things are going to be playing the vocoder. Okay, let me explain. So on the vocoder, you have the mic input that you would speaker sing into, and you have a built-in synthesizer, or you have an external synthesizer input, which would provide the sound that the spectral characteristics of your voice are applied to. Now, typically, when you play the vocoder, you hold down a chord and then say something into the mic, and then something happens. But let me remind you that there are inputs for an external synth and inputs for a microphone on the back of the vocoder. And there's even a 1/4-inch jack for the microphone input, which becomes very, very interesting. So what basically this allows you to do, and I'm thankful this made it into the design, is you can vocode with external sounds. And I'm not just saying using a microphone and then an external synthesizer like I've done in at least some video, I'm sure. I'm talking about not using a microphone at all and using the input in the microphone section, just piping whatever sound you want into that and having that, the spectral characteristics of that sound applied to whatever the other thing you're inputting in. It doesn't even have to be a synthesizer. There doesn't have to be a voice or a synthesizer at all, which I'm just about to demonstrate, although there might be some voice work that I do. Okay, so I tried to think about how to do this. Someone right now has their watch out and they're like, let's wait till the talking stops and then I'll leave a comment about when the talking stops. Sorry, I'm bitter. Anyway, so I was trying to think about the best way to demonstrate this, and I thought, okay, well, you need to like get a ukulele and then play that, and then have an auto harp also playing. And I'm like, I can't do all these different sounds at the same time. And also the setup for these things, I'd have to set them up, and then I'd have to see if that sound actually even really sounds good, which it may not. Sometimes applying the spectral characteristics of one sound to another sound doesn't result in something cool. I'm not guaranteeing that all of the things that I do in this video will be cool, but that's a lot of work for a possibly not that interesting outcome. So you might be able to see there's gray over here at the edge of the screen. That gray is a Roland VS1680 hard disk recorder. And although, oh no, it's still using its hard disk. I'm going to replace that with compact flash. Anyway, you don't care about that. So this particular Roland VS1680 contains a huge amount of music that I have written since like 2001. So there are a lot of tracks of synchronized music because they're just songs. And I thought it'd be interesting to take the output of various tracks and put them into the inputs on the microphone input and the external synth input and see what happens when I combine two different tracks of a song that already exists. It's kind of a fun way to generate some interesting sounds that are consistent with each other because they are at the same meter, rhythm, etc., and key often, and therefore have a relationship. Now, of course, it might be interesting to combine things that don't have a relationship as well. But anyway, this is my temporary solution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to just sort of select tracks in various songs and combine them with the vocoder, applying the spectral characteristics of one track to another track, and just see how that works. I think I have one ready right now. Let's see what happens. Okay, now basically I have this wired so that the right output of the main output goes to one input, and the left output from the main output goes into one of the other input. And these can be switched, of course, which I may do just to see what happens when you apply the spectral characteristics of one thing to another and then the other thing back to the first. who knows what'll happen. Sometimes you get a really cool sound one way and kind of a dull sound the other way. Anyway, let's see what we have here. Okay, so what we were just hearing, that sort of weird, strange sound, was some acoustic guitar arpeggiations happening, finger picking stuff happening, and then occasional chords on a piano coming in. And I'm not sure which was affecting the other, but that's basically what it sounds like. We could right now switch it and see what it sounds like switched. No guarantees that this will sound good, but let's see. Not quite as usable. Yeah, see, for example, yeah, because there isn't a sound to start with. Anyway, so that didn't work. So let's move on to finding another sound to work with. Okay, so in this one, I have taken a song that I have that has an actual choir in it, and also piano and guitar and several other things. But in this first instance, I'm going to use the piano and the choir as a vocoding pair. So let's hear how that sounds. Now there is a little bit of distortion here, and I'm not sure where it's coming from. The input on the mic, even when you're using the line input, is really hot. But I have the levels pretty low, so I'm not sure where the distortion is coming from, but distortion is a pretty common thing in vocoding that I've found. Anyway, so here is what it sounds like to have a choir and a piano together. I don't know if you noticed this, but go back and listen to it again. It's really kind of weird. There's a weird. Okay, so the choir was singing an ah vowel, and because of the frequency content of the piano, it did some vowel changing of the choir sound. Like you could hear some kind of oh wah things happening in there because of the frequencies introduced by the piano, which I find particularly interesting. Okay, here's the same song again, and this time we have a vocoder and guitar combination. Let's have a listen to that and hope it works. It's been kind of buggy. Okay, here we go. Very interesting. Man, I had a really hard time getting that to work, but in the end it did. I had to switch the inputs back and forth several different times. It was distorting in this really bizarre way. Anyway, it worked. Now I have to admit I'm really curious about what would happen crossing the piano and the guitar in that example. So it's going to be that same song again this time, what the piano and the guitar do to each other. Keep in mind, and I just realized this, that if I knew the chords to this, I don't remember the chords of the song. Is it A major 7? I don't know. I also could have been playing along with that, because while the sounds themselves are triggering the vocoder effect, the mic is triggering the input of the external synth, just like it would if we were using the internal mic and playing a chord. But you can, you can also trigger the internal vocoding synthesizer as well. So you can vocode using, I could be playing these chords along with this thing, and the input that's going into the microphone input would be vocoding the internal synthesizer as well as the external synth, because they can be happening literally at the same time, which is a really cool thing. Especially if you want to kind of, vocoding tends to create these narrow frequency bands, and it kind of sounds a little mid-rangey a lot of the time. And you could fix that with playing more frequencies that are more broad. Anyway. Okay, and next is a song that I wrote a long time ago with a Sonic 6 and real drums called Mine. And here is what I believe to be the drums driving the Sonic 6. But it sounds a little something like this. And there's another part that works as well. So you can, in this way, sort of apply the rhythm of one thing to the timbre of another thing, and also the timbre of one thing that is making the rhythm to the other thing, which is why it sounds so weird. But yeah, that was a happy find when I heard that. That's a really interesting rhythmic outcome, and it was just a hand-played Sonic 6 part and some live drums that were recorded. So that's what that one was. Okay, this is going to be another instance of me using drums as the driver. This time the drums are driving a synth chord part. If I remember correctly, these are live, very sloppy drums played by me, controlling chords that I think were made by a Roland JX3P. Okay, they sound a little like this. And you can just imagine how cool that effect would have been had those drums been either expertly played or metrically played at the very least, or, you know, if there were some sort of quantized drum thing, it would really bring out those, the harmonics in the drums were making interesting, almost vocal accents within the synthesizer range of harmonics, which was very interesting. Okay, for this last one, I took this sort of Beatlesque song that I can't remember what the instruments. It was me drumming and me playing piano, me playing bass, I think on a mini Moog, and singing. And so what I did is I started off, I just was going to do a vocoder sound, like a traditional like vocal vocoder sound with my voice controlling a piano, because that's the other thing. Like you can still, do vocoding sounds with, your voice, but then it doesn't have to be even an electronic instrument. It could be anything. But as I was messing around with this, I realized how fun it was to have groups of things vocoding other groups of things. So there's actually, I don't know how I have this arranged. Well, hold on, let me look. Okay, it looks like my voice and the bass are controlling the drums and the piano. I don't know. It's weird. It's a very weird thing. But I kind of like the sound of it, so I'm just going to play it for fun. Okay, it sounds a little something like this. Okay, so that's pretty bizarre. And if you heard the song, it's actually a really straightforward Beatlesque song, but now it sounds crazy and weird and chopped up and bizarre. But that's the sort of thing. I mean, you can use this vocoder not just as a way to, apply your voice to a synthesizer, but as a production tool, as the creation of new timbres and new executions. Certainly you can use the rhythm of a one sound to control the articulation of another sound. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do with the vocoder on here, other than plug a mic into the back and play chords as you talk. So that's the thing I really wanted to demonstrate, was that the vocoder is a really amazing traditional electronic music tool to take sound and do new things with it. You basically are like engaging in synthesis by crashing two different sets of harmonics together, which is, I think, a totally unexamined and underutilized means of creating interesting and new timbres. So that is the Behringer VC340.